Oh, you gotta be kidding me.
Resident Evil 4 Remake came out in 2023, almost 20 years after the original game, which was released in 2005. I am a lifelong RE fan, and the original RE4 is one of my favorite games in the franchise. Hell, it is even one of my favorite games of all time. I have replayed it countless times and spent hundreds of hours with it both on the original PS2 and on PC. I usually replay the game once a year, that's how much I like it. When the remake was announced in 2022, I was skeptical because of the previous not so great RE3 remake. But most importantly, the original RE4 holds up great even today. I did not see a reason for a remake, which is a sentiment that a lot of people in the RE community shared. I have to admit though that the gameplay presented in the trailer looked great. In this review, I will review the RE4 remake and compare some of the major changes from the original. Just to provide some context, Resident Evil is my favorite gaming franchise, and I started with the original trilogy back in kindergarten 20 years ago, and I also played almost every RE game throughout my life. Therefore, I might be biased in some way or another, and remember that everything that will be said is just my opinion and does not necessarily reflect everyone's experience. The review will be spoiler free when it comes to the story. However, I will be talking about the gameplay mechanics and level design of the game.
Well then, should be just another day in the office, right?
The game follows the protagonist Leon S. Kennedy, one of the main characters from RE2, as he goes to rural Spain to save the president's kidnapped daughter Ashley Graham. The rescue mission will soon take an unexpected turn, and Leon will be dealing with much more than some kidnappers.
Are you hurt?
No, I'm okay. Yes.
You did well back there. Seems this isn't your first time running from creeps.
I can't tell if that's meant to be a compliment.
Yeah.
Right from the first trailer, the message was clear. Remake was supposed to be much darker, scarier, and more serious game than the original. I was all up for it because the original tends to lean towards too action-heavy approach and cheesy lines, which could weaken the suspense at times. This change in tone is apparent right from the start of the game and stays all the way to the end. That is not to say that the remake is not action-oriented though. There are plenty of high adrenaline sequences and pretty much every section that was present in the original, with the difference being the mood change. And when I say that pretty much every section of the game from the original is still present, I mean it. There were no drastic cuts like in the RE3 remake. Some cuts were made here and there, mostly by the end of the game on the island section. I don't consider those cuts too big of a deal, because Island is my least favorite part of the game, and at that point in the game it can drag a little. And it is much easier to forgive the omission of something when it is compensated by expanding some areas and making them more complex from both the gameplay perspective and level design. Other sections of the game are completely reimagined, and quality-wise they are on par with the original, if not even better. Both the village and castle, two of the three main game areas, are visually stunning and more interconnected. Backtracking is utilized slightly more in the remake, which is definitely a good thing. The areas that you will be passing for the second or even third time might be changed and have different enemies and hazards around them. There are even 2 chapters that provide a slight semi-open world experience. You can explore and decide which areas you want to visit first, which creates the sense of freedom and authenticity of the world. One of these chapters takes place during the village section when you are roaming around the lake in the boat. The other happens in a castle, where you have the opportunity to enter multiple rooms from a hub, and the order is up to you. Those levels are definitely my favorite ones. The third and final portion of the game takes place on an island and is known for its even heavier focus on action. Compared to the original, the action bits are not as over the top, while the scary parts are even more terrifying. Overall, the presentation of the game is perfect. The graphics and attention to detail really make the game believable and realistic. Even the weather changes throughout the chapters, which creates different moods in the places you have already visited. Leon's body language will even change based on how you handle the previous encounter with the enemy. Music is also an essential part of the atmosphere, and I am happy to say that there is plenty of music and it is great. My problem with the previous RE remakes was the silence that was present almost constantly. The silent parts can still be found in the RE4 remake, but there are now many more sections that are accompanied by wonderful music. The scores always complement the situation you found yourself in. It is heavy and dramatic during combat, peaceful and reminiscing while in the safe rooms. The puzzles also make their return, and they are in a good shape. Most of them are pretty easy and straightforward, but some can be a bit challenging. What's more important, the puzzles were not simply copied from the original game, but mostly reimagined and expanded. Some puzzles were even completely cut and replaced by different ones in other places of the game. I am particularly happy about the omission of a certain puzzle that occurs during the portion of the game where you play as Ashley. That area is also fully reimagined with new puzzles and level design, which I prefer over the original.
There we go.
When talking about expanding, I must mention the friendly merchant that is always down for selling us the hottest hardware while relieving us of unnecessary baggage. For a price, of course.
Welcome. Well done. You've proven yourself reliable. Got some rare things on sale, stranger. You've got a soft spot for treasure, eh? Yeah, that's the way.
Throughout the whole game, there are various optional quests from the merchant, ranging from shooting down medallions to killing beasts. The reward for these tasks are gems that can be used as a currency for different kinds of assortment that can only be bought with these. This small addition does so much for the game. It creates a secondary purpose for some areas that would otherwise be one and done visits. Other than that, there is simply more to do, and through careful exploration witness more. And it is very rewarding to spend this hard-earned currency on something useful. Stealth is also a new feature, even though it is not as important or useful. Nonetheless, it is nice to have this option. It is not mandatory, and I feel like there are only a few places where it can be utilized, and even there you usually take 2 or 3 enemies silently before the inevitable mayhem begins. To use stealth, you need a knife. You can use disposable knives that you will find throughout your playthrough, or use Leon's trusty knife, which can be upgraded and repaired. It can save you from many sticky situations, since it can be used not only for the offense, but also for the defense. You can parry almost any attack with the correctly timed dodge. The knives do have durability though, so it is important to preserve them and keep them for truly desperate situations. Leon's knife can be repaired at the merchant and also upgraded to last longer and deal more damage. This creates an additional strategic layer and makes the player think about when and how they will use the knife. There are many weapons alongside the knife, many of them returning from the OG game, but there are also some new firearms to experience. Each one of them can be upgraded at the merchant with the player's money. There is also a lot of categories when upgrading any given gun, such as the firepower, rate of fire, magazine capacity, or faster reload. This makes you think about which weapons you want to upgrade and use in the long run. Of course, you can sell your guns at any time and buy new ones that will appear later in the game. Additionally, each gun has a special upgrade that can be purchased after maxing out all of the attributes. This is usually a very powerful upgrade that makes the gun even stronger or provides some kind of other unusual benefit, like increasing the critical shot chance or providing a hilariously big ammo capacity. Each weapon feels good to use, has unique traits, and is useful in specific situations. It is up to the player to choose their own weapon loadout based on their combat preferences. Weapons are the key element of the game, since there will be hundreds of enemies for you to take down. The shooting, gunplay, and overall combat mechanics are great, providing smooth and exciting experience. Engaging in combat is fun. Unlike in the original game, you can move while shooting, which will, however, greatly decrease your accuracy. The combat is adjusted to this change by providing more enemies at once. Carefully choosing the correct weapons for a given situation is also essential, as you will likely use different guns when dealing with a single enemy versus a group of enemies coming from multiple sides. A larger number of weapons will provide greater versatility, as you will be better equipped to deal with different situations and scenarios. Having multiple weapons also means that you will have less space in your inventory for other items, such as ammo and healing items. The inventory is as good as the original, which is popular for its Tetris-like shuffling of items. Here in the remake, I rarely organize my inventory because there is now a button that will automatically sort your items and make as much space as possible. This is handy on one hand, but it also eliminates the fun that comes with the manual inventory management. The balancing of the inventory space is good, as you will often have to decide what you will take or what you will craft in order to free some space. Ultimately, the whole game is balanced well. There are multiple difficulties to choose from, which will suit all kinds of players. Just as in the original, the adaptive difficulty system is present. It is a hidden mechanism that monitors how well you are doing. If you are, for example, low on ammo or healing items, the game will get easier for a while, lowering the enemy's health points or increasing the chance of a critical shot until you get back on track. And on the contrary, if you are doing well, stacked up on ammo and healing items, enemies will be more aggressive and will withstand more damage. This mechanism is present to improve your experience by always providing consistent gameplay. It is so well done that you will barely notice it, and the overall difficulty that you choose at the beginning of the run will also influence the strength of the adaptive difficulty.
Leon! This way, hurry!
Resident Evil games are highly replayable and popular with speedrunners, especially the old games with fixed camera angles. I am happy to say that Resident Evil 4 Remake is one of them, as there is a ton of stuff to unlock, ranging from costumes to actual new weapons. You can also try different difficulties to find your true potential, as the highest difficulty will truly challenge you even when playing a New Game Plus.
Great.
There are also achievements that are fun to complete. They are not so difficult, and some of them require you to play the game in a certain way, for example, not visiting the merchant during the whole playthrough or using only specific weapons. You can try different approaches by choosing other weapons and see how they play. The game is also fairly long, with the first playthrough being around 15 hours. I have put a total of 70 hours into the game with multiple playthroughs, and I still haven't got all the achievements.
I'm sure you boys didn't come all the way out here to roast marshmallows. Maybe you did.
There is also a DLC called The Separate Ways, in which you play as another character, Ada, and witness the story from her point of view. Unfortunately, this DLC is being sold separately, but it lives up to its expectations. The quality of the gameplay is on par with the main game and will provide an additional 6 hours of entertainment with new weapons, locations and pieces of story to uncover. There are also areas that are reused from the original game, but it feels organic to go through them as Ada, facing different challenges as well. There are also some achievements to get in this DLC. When you are done both with the main game and the DLC, you can try the extra game mode called Mercenaries. It is a popular mode in RE games when you play as one of the characters from the game and battle against relentless waves of enemies trying to get a high score in a certain time. It is fast and the focus on action will lead to an adrenaline gameplay experience. Each character has their own unique weapon loadout and special ability. The stages are also very distinct and have different enemies and mini-bosses. It was fun to try to get the highest score possible, acquiring the S++ rank, but I have to admit that after some time it was starting to feel repetitive and dull. If you are a completionist and you want to earn the highest rank on all the stages with each character, it will take some hours. And it is also necessary to do it for a certain reward. But if you are playing the Mercenaries just casually, there is a lot of potential and fun to have for some time. I think it is pretty clear at this point that I truly enjoyed the game. Even if I was skeptical before the launch, all my worries turned out to be unjustified. Resident Evil 4 Remake exceeded my expectations and can be rightfully compared with the original game. I would go as far as to say that the remake is better in some respects. You see, when talking about the original RE trilogy and its remakes, I still prefer the original games even though I love the remakes. They are just too different and I perceive them as a completely new games rather than remakes. For example, the original Resident Evil 2 and the Resident Evil 2 remake are so different that I don't think about these two games as the original and the remake, but rather as two separate individual games working with the more or less same source material. This is not the case with RE4. While the original still holds up today and is worth playing, I think I would just straight recommend the remade version of RE4 to a player that has never played the original. This would not have been the case with the original trilogy, perhaps with the exception of RE1. Resident Evil 4 Remake is that good. It has almost all the material from the original game, expands some aspects, adds new gameplay mechanics, and of course puts it all into a brand new graphical code which is gorgeous to look at. I think that from now on I will be annually replaying the remake and not the original anymore. It is now one of my favorite RE games. This quality of remaking should really be a new standard in the industry. I am happy that Resident Evil 4 got the correct treatment it rightfully deserved. On the other hand, it leaves me saddened as I wonder what could have been if the same amount of time and love was applied to Resident Evil 3 Remake. More on that some other time, perhaps.